One side of renewable energy that nobody really talks about is the landowners. We hear of studies and stories of how these projects don't work, how they don't produce as much as they're supposed to, how it's too cold here in Alberta for these to work. We've heard of how much energy it produces to take them, that they'll never make it back in their lifetime. We hear a lot of talk about that, but we don't talk much about where the land came from that they build these projects on and how they got it. So let's talk about that a little bit. There's three words that are very significant here: industrial blanket easement. Let's break that down. Easement is an agreement between a landowner and someone who wants to utilize their land. The person who wants to use the land comes to the landowner and says, I want to use this specific area for this purpose. Here are some specific details about what I want to do. Can we come to an agreement? Here's what I'm willing to pay you. And the landowner will maybe make some changes to that, maybe up the price or whatever. They'll come to an agreement and an easement has been established. I'm in oil field country and we refer to this as a lease. An oil field company will be very specific about what they want because they need to make sure that they have the rights to whatever it is that they want in that space. And they need to make sure they have enough space to do it. So they'll be very specific. They'll come stake it out and show you what they want it to look like. But with the renewables, the specificity is not quite the same. When they come to talk to you about putting renewables on your land, say for a windmill, they will give you a drawing and they will say, here's where you want to put this windmill. Here's the access road. Here's where the trench will be for the cable. This is what we want to do. And this is the area it'll take up. But what they don't tell you is that is not the easement agreement. The easement agreement is kind of buried in a little bit of fine print. It is a blanket easement. Blanket meaning covers the whole thing. So if that parcel of land is a quarter or a half section or a full section, that easement covers the entirety of that land. Now, the first word in the industrial blanket easement is industrial. And when you zone a land as industrial, it is worth more than agricultural land by an incredible margin. By an incredible margin. You think agricultural land is hard to find? Try finding industrial land. Industrial land could be used for mining. They could put wind turbines on it, a solar farm, batteries. They could put a car plant on there. Whatever they want, they can put there if it's zoned for industrial. It has a lot of value. So here's how this works. A salesman comes to you, a landowner, and says, hey, we want to put this project up on your land. This is what this will look like. You say, okay, that's all well and dandy. Maybe ask him a few questions. Might not even be able to answer them, but says, hey, can you just sign a few papers here and we'll get going along. We'll talk about the deception of salesmen in this process in a different video. So you sign the paper and you wait for some information to get back to you and you wait for your money because they promised you a lot of money to make this thing happen. Now that the agreement, now that's been signed, that company wants to develop the project, takes that to a financing institution, lender, and says, hey, look, I got this here industrial blanket easement on this land. This is pretty fancy, isn't it? I want to build a wind turbine. You give me a loan to do it. I got some collateral. And the financial institution goes, oh, that's pretty fancy. Heck yeah, here's a few $1,000,000. Have a blast. We'll just stamp a lien on that. We'll be good to go. You'll pay it back, right? The landowner may not even be aware of this. In some situations, I've actually heard of several instances of this now around me, landowner gets notification in the mail that, hey, that quarter of land you put up as collateral for your crop inputs loan so you can run your farm, that collateral no longer exists because that quarter of land has a multi-million-dollar lien put against it and you can't use it for that anymore. And also, if you want to transfer this land, like say in an estate, or if you want to sell it outright before you die or whatever, you cannot do that because this land is tied up and has this lien against it. Just like if you go to sell a car and it has a mechanic's lien, if that land gets sold, that has to be satisfied first. Agricultural land might be worth, in my area, land is not worth a whole lot when you compare it to some of the better regions in the province. Let's even say it's $250,000 per quarter. If it has a multi-million-dollar lien put against it, even selling the land is not going to satisfy that lien, which means then the land then goes to the person holding that loan. So you can't sell that land until the lien is satisfied. Now, these industrial blanket easements, a lot of landowners aren't aware that they have them because it's not something that's talked about. Again, I said the deceptiveness of salesmen we'll talk about later. But this industrial blanket easement gives the company that's developing the project rights to do pretty much whatever they want. The contracts might vary, but depending on how they have things worded and set up, an industrial blanket easement may allow the company to do literally whatever they want. If they told you they're going to put up one turbine, well, maybe now they can put up three. They told you one access road, the whole thing might be an access road. They might make a laydown yard there just for giggles. They told you one power line, there might be 4 or 5. You had a dugout there you want it protected, they might fill that in because they want to put something there. Depending on how the contract is set up, they might be able to do whatever they want with the entirety of the land without your knowing or say so because you are now a 49% controlled interest in your own land. So, industrial blanket easement. That is how a lot of these large projects are financed, and that is how a lot of the land is acquired. And we'll talk about the specifics of how some of the salesmen do this in a later video. But if you have an industrial project like this on your land, solar, batteries, wind farms, etc., and you're not aware of this, you might want to dig into your contract a little bit, maybe ask a lawyer or a land agent about it. Chances are you've got an industrial blanket easement you don't even know about. Read the fine print, folks. If it sounds too good to be true, probably is.